Okay, it is 12:10. Jen, are you ready to kick off this the parking lot questions and adjournment?
Sure. Yep, I'm ready. Okay, so we can start off with any of the TIC moderators. If any of you could give out any report outs. I know yesterday you had some pretty in-depth report outs, so if we have any kind of lessons learned from today, it would be a good time to share them.
I'm happy to jump in unless, Jason, you look like you're ready to go.
Nope, it's all yours. Go for it.
You want to flip a coin?
Yep, draw a straw.
All right. Well, this morning we had Rebecca Davis from Lower Allen Township talk about stormwater fees. And the two big takeaways to remember from that presentation was the importance of doing, substantial outreach with your community before a fee is put into place. They did about a year's worth of outreach and had good success with that. But even with that much outreach, there's still portions of the community that when the stormwater fee hit, were caught unaware. So the point being, you can never do enough outreach, and it's definitely worth the investment up front in educating your community about the purpose of the fee, how it works, why it's beneficial. And the other key takeaway from that session is the importance of having your credit program in place before the fee rolls out. So those were two really big takeaways. Highly recommend you check out the presentation if you weren't in that session. And then I think everybody was in the Wyoming Valley Stormwater Authority presentation today with Jeff Colella and Samantha Elbert. But two of the things that I took away from that as being really important was just cheerleading for the idea of regionalization and collaboration when it comes to your stormwater efforts, in as much as the cost savings that you can experience and the ability to do projects that you can get credit for within the authority, even if your specific municipality doesn't have the space. You don't want to go through the eminent domain process to try to get the space that you need to put in some of these projects. And having that regionalization approach allows for you to take credit where there's space within the boundary of the authority. And then the idea they really emphasized was the success in going for grants as a collaborative entity. It increases your chances and just makes your projects that much stronger. Then we had Rich Heineman from Pennsylvania Department of Transportation talk about the inspection and maintenance process of stormwater control measures that DOT is responsible for. So an in-depth look at their inspection process and their maintenance process. And the really big takeaway that everyone needs to know about is they're in the pilot process of an SCM maintenance training. It's a modular training. It's got 8 modules to it. They've just had about 20 people from the department pilot it. They're addressing comments. And then Rich said it's going to be available to folks. So you can look on their training calendar, or you can get in touch with him specifically to see if you can request that training. But it looks like it's going to be great. So if you're interested in having maintenance training for your municipality, reach out to Rich at DOT. And then we just wrapped up with a really interesting presentation by Dr. Janae Park Martinez from PSU Berks, talking about her project to have a revegetated basin on campus. And she shared with us the ups and downs of this project. The things she emphasized for the success of this project is really knowing the existing conditions of your basin when you're picking the plantings that you want to use. People may tend to think it's a wet environment, but actually you need to really understand, how sunny it is, what the moisture content is, and if you have predators when you're picking out your plants. She emphasized creative ways to get your plantings into your basin, including growing things from seed. She did a lot of that, which was really great. And then she has plans to do a comparative study using her students, making it a living laboratory to be able to look at the performance of the revegetated portion of the basin versus the grassed portion of the basin that still remains, to look at things like infiltration, look at sediment filtration, look at biodiversity. So we were saying that she'll have to come back to these forums if we have them again and report on the success of her revegetated basin project and her students' findings. But so those are the highlights from the sessions I moderated today.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Jason.
Okay, I'll go next. So we started the day with Ellen Kohler, walking from the University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center, and she talked a little bit about just some of the basics for funding. She made the point that you don't necessarily have to have a utility in your municipality to receive funding. She also walked through the benefit of when you're trying to apply for funding, that sometimes evaluating some of the additional BMP functions. I think she did not use this term, but I think that evaluating some of the triple bottom line benefits of the stormwater BMPs that you're implementing and looking for funding can help open up to a variety of different funding sources. So Ellen, I hope it's okay that I used that term. And then looking at municipal versus private options, so incentivizing, particularly to when you're looking for funding, just the idea of incentivizing pervious areas, so making sure that you don't just have minimum parkings, that there could be maximums for parking, things like that, just to try to reduce the amount of impervious area that's going in on private projects and retrofits. Retrofits are cheaper, so she emphasized the point of emphasis that sometimes also is good to look for potential retrofits of existing BMPs to try to meet some of your compliance targets. And then also always looking for some integrated stormwater. So she used the term dig once, like looking for opportunities for CIP projects. And I think this came up in some of the other sessions and also in some of the previous forums that the city of Lancaster did a study that showed that it was about a 40% reduction in the cost of implementing particularly green stormwater infrastructures when you integrate those projects into capital improvement projects, such as road projects or storm drain projects. And then also highlighted and emphasized the importance of engaging with partners. So from there, we jumped straight into some other financing options. So we heard from Robert Booz at the Pinvest about some financing opportunities there. And I think he made a few great points that we'll highlight. So to date, Pinvest has funded around $98 billion worth of projects. So they've given out quite a bit of funding and loaned quite a bit of loan opportunities. Their budget for 2021 was $700 million. And so they do have quite a bit of funding to assist in getting projects in the ground. So generally they'll take applications 4 times a year, but also mention that if it's the right projects, specifically if you're looking for around half of the funding. So he gave the example of you're looking for half of $1 million in loans or funding for $1 million project, that there will accept applications for those types of funding opportunities anytime. Like just starting a dialogue with them seems to be the most important step. So they look for construction ready projects also, so that having your projects ready to go with the plan, so that when the funding is available, you can be ready to put shovels in the ground and be ready to move forward with those. So gave a couple of examples about a few projects. One was in the capital region, where they were implementing green stormwater infrastructure in some of the communities that have received less attention, some of the environmental justice opportunities. They're looking to implement green stormwater infrastructure in communities that also have combined sewers to gain some of the additional benefits. So adding some of the green to some of those neighborhoods. So they gave that as one example of a project that they provided some loans and funding for. He said the process can be pretty quick particularly if you're ready for construction. They can receive the loans, they become involved, they'll assist with the bids. Once the bids are settled, it can usually be 4 or 5 months to be able to move on some of that funding. So it can be provided relatively quickly. I also gave a couple of other examples, but I think the main point was that it shouldn't let a community that do try to be financially responsible, that some of these loans can be part of a fiscally responsible plan. They do offer loans with 1% to 2% interest. So it can be integrated into some of the existing budget, or if there are issues or emergencies or emergency maintenance or other issues that need to be addressed, if there's flooding, that can provide some low-cost loans, but also some grants and other funding if the opportunity arises or warrants it. And it can be, they said they could carry that debt for 20 to 30 years, so it can be spread out. Particularly if there's an emergency that needs to be addressed, they can carry the funding out for a number of years. So it can be a fiscally responsible option for addressing issues. And then the last session that I moderated was with Mark Harmon. He walked through some of the O&M and verifying annual compliance for O&M for private BMPs specifically. And so he looked at some of the options for that, his presentation focused on some of the non-technical concepts. It was more of an overview of the O&M. So he talked through several steps that they're looking for when he's particularly is doing inspections for municipalities. So they're looking for a lot of the required BMP documentation. They want to know where all of your BMPs are located, some guidance or documentation for any required maintenance. So they reference back to the Pennsylvania BMP manual as having some guidelines there for typical operation and maintenance requirements. And then making sure that you have all the documentation for your BMP. So they want to see that you have the BMP type, the year it was installed, the area of the BMP all documented, and then any previous inspections or maintenance activities that have occurred in the past. So they want to see all of that. And then that's all part of that assessment for compliance, generally by that permit holder. And so part of the procedures that they follow for verifying that the private BMPs have been maintained and are in compliance for the OM portion of the permit. He's looking there. First, he'll issue a notification, and then he'll communicate with the property owners. So he wants to make sure that the property owners understand the O&M requirements, defining the O&M. He'll work with the property owners, answer any questions that they may have. He'll give them, if there are any compliance issues, he'll give them a deadline for complying, and then he comes back to make sure and verify that the operation and maintenance has been performed. He also communicates with those property owners to let them know who is responsible for the cost of maintaining the BMPs. And then he does have several tracking mechanisms, so they are tracking compliance or non-compliance of all of the private BMPs that he is inspecting. And then we had a couple of great questions as well. One was asking specifically about cases of BMP failures that were caused by lack of O&M, and he gave one example of a large detention basin that a homeowners association was responsible for that had a significant amount of sediment, and they had to come in and essentially take that HOA to court and go through the litigation for that HOA to comply and to perform the maintenance that was required. But also mentioned that I think there's some education there as well, just making sure that that HOA understood that they were responsible for the maintenance and what the maintenance entailed. So I think that essentially covered the 3 sessions that I was a part of.
All right, and this is Barry. My first session was with Ellen Kohler, the Environmental Finance Center, and she went through quite a few potential grant programs for municipalities, including Pinvest, the State Revolving Fund, Regional Conservation Partnership Program. The Dirt and Gravel Low Volume Road Program has funding that can include alleys in municipalities. DCED, Community Block Grants. We had a little bit of a discussion on the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Program and the new BRIC grant program from FEMA, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program. It's said to be funded at over $1 billion this year, and FEMA is now embracing nature-based solutions, which includes a lot of the green infrastructure practices municipalities are using in their MS4 programs. A couple caveats on grants from Ellen. It can take a while to receive the money from the time you conceive of a project to the time you do the application, wait for results, and actually receive the money. And most grantors won't include funding for O&M in their grants. So that was the first session I moderated. The second one was from Ashley Showers, the Berks County MS4 Steering Committee and Cooperative Education Program representative. The county developed an MS4 steering committee back in 2012 with informal meetings of municipality, permittees, and engineers, discussed how they could save money and combine efforts. And what they did is they developed an intergovernmental ordinance and cost sharing agreement with annual membership fees for the participating municipalities that started out as at around $1,500, but now it's dropped to $700. They set up a board and procedures and so forth for deciding which projects they were going to launch. The steering committee has a 4-person board. There's 3 education partners involved, and they focus on minimum control measures 1, 3, and 6. They have a reporting mechanism for their communities, which are each individually responsible for fulfilling their permit requirements. And they see their work as one tool in the toolbox for the participating municipalities. The 3rd session I moderated just ended from Kate Ebel from the Wildlands Conservancy on a fairly impressive array of projects. The Conservancy was started in 1973 in the Lehigh River watershed. The watershed has 2,000 miles of streams, portions of 10 counties. The Conservancy is focused on land protection. They have 12 nature preserves and have protected more than 54,000 acres of high-value conservation lands, outreach, and ecological restoration services. They work with public and private landowners on stream restoration and stream health, bank restoration, dam removal, habitat improvement, and agricultural BMPs. And we were treated to, more than a half a dozen or so restoration projects that included a wide array of water quality approaches and practices, restoration, a fairly large dam removal project, and 24 buffer restoration projects have been completed by this group over the last 3 years. So it was quite a walk through some really interesting projects for my last presentation.
All right, great. Thank you for those report outs. Those are great. All right, so pull my camera back up here. All right, great. Okay, so I think let's check in on parking lot questions. Were there any parking lot questions from any of those sessions that we needed to come back to? Okay, hearing
We
none.
did have one quick comment on, there was a question about whether or not DEP would credit dam removal. And there was a comment that not just dam removal, but if you did a restoration project, a watershed restoration project in association with the dam removal project, that there could be credit for that. Just a little bit of a clarification there on how that would be treated.
Yeah, and I was say I don't think so. Not for us. We were able to answer all the questions in the sessions, I believe.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, any input to that question, or is that something we can follow up on after this concludes? All right. Any additional feedback? All right.
Well, this is Adrienne. Just before we sign off, I want to, on behalf of Tetra Tech, want to thank our Tetra Tech team for moderating, organizing. There was a lot of behind the scenes happening. Hopefully we addressed any AV issues and sound issues that you guys had. We really enjoyed supporting this series of forums, and thanks to all the speakers for sharing their experiences, and us Tetra Tech folk learned a lot in addition to, I'm sure, all the attendees. And also another plug for our evaluation survey. I'm about to put the link for today's survey in the chat, and I'm also going to send an email later today with the links from yesterday and today. And just a reminder that your feedback is really important to us. It helps us do any plan any trainings in the future that might happen, and so that we can address and hopefully continue to improve and make these beneficial to all attendees.
Adriana, can I ask a quick question? How long are you guys going to leave the training pages posted?
So our plan is to leave it up for probably around 6 months. However, all of the videos are posted on the, we have a Tetra Tech Water YouTube channel, and that is not going anywhere. So that's posted, and so you guys can link to that. Those are actually where the videos are actually posted. And then on our training page and the agenda page, we're actually linking to that YouTube channel. So for EFC or the any of the Pennsylvania training sites, you can link directly to the video that's on the YouTube channel, and we're never intending to take that down. So hopefully these, from these 3 forums, I don't even know how many videos we have. We have so many, I would say probably it's gonna be close to 50. So hopefully these will be continue to be training resources for EPA in Pennsylvania for a while.
Thanks, Adriana. And on behalf of the whole planning team, I want to thank you all for attending over the last couple of days. And we really appreciate those who have volunteered to take the time to share their experiences. This really couldn't be successful without you. So we very much appreciate it. As Adriana said, please take some time, fill out the surveys. We will use that information planning going forward. And we hope this was a beneficial experience and that you gained some valuable knowledge. So thank you, and have a great afternoon.